Hello, my name is Lauren Gallimore, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about deaf education. So I've spent a lot of years myself growing up in the deaf education system. And as a student, I graduated and I traveled and I became a trainer for teachers. And over time, I've looked closer and closer at deaf education, and I've noticed that there is a lot of issues in the deaf education system. There are a lot of children who are still failing in the education system and struggling to get good grades, and this has impacted their future life and their work. So I'm a trainer now, and I've thought a lot about how I want to go about changing the deaf education system. And I've thought a lot about what it is that I want to do in order to improve the deaf education system. And over time, I've narrowed it down to one single goal. And really, I just want to make improvements. And what I have found the best in deaf education and learning about deaf education is meeting deaf people and asking them about their experiences. And through this process, they have expressed to me their frustrations and their struggles. I've found that asking these deaf individuals who have graduated is best because they are the outcome. And what I've found is that it is the same old story. That throughout time, not much has changed. These issues have persisted and followed through time. Again, it's just the same old story. And the topic revolves around language. So there's two things that I want to talk about: language and communication. And this can become a very heated debate and conversation. It's important to look at deaf people and their complaints and their frustrations and to talk about them. It's these deaf students who entered into the school as new students, and understanding the relationship with the teachers is important, because teachers have shown that they are not competent in their signing. And so students, oftentimes it's going over their heads because they're not understanding their teachers. There's no connection and no relationship there. And in hearing culture, there's a lot of emphasis around oralism. And I understand that that can be important. But over time, they have not learned their own language skills. They have not had good experiences. And I have asked deaf people, so did you enjoy your experiences growing up in the education system? And most of the time they have told me that most of their experiences have been negative. There have been a few students who have said that they were impacted in a positive way, that they had the support that they needed, and that there was a good system that was surrounding them. But that is a very limited pool of people who have had those experiences. Most people have had a pretty negative one. So I've found that it's been very important to look at the people who have had struggles. So now I've looked at the teachers and their language problems. And that fascinates me because it means that the teachers need to improve in order to impact the students in their classroom. So I've taken all of the information from 60 different education systems. And I've noticed the differences in what they've done in their teaching. Most of them are focused on oralism, and hardly any of them are focused on sign language. And the sign language classes are hardly ever required. And it's the same thing for some of the universities that I've observed. They also don't have sign language requirements. So 60 different colleges all over, and hardly any of them practice ASL or have it as a requirement. And so we need to really focus on changing that in programs in order to strengthen the experience of the deaf education system. So for example, a lot of times when teachers enter into the classroom, okay, so in America, if there is a college that's teaching English and you have a French person come and try to teach English classes, there would be a lot of complaints because their English is weak and it's all over the place. And it's the same thing for deaf people. In their experience, it's been more positive because their teachers have great skills with their English. So it's best to start those language development skills from the age of 0 to 5. If you really make an emphasis on sign language, in the future they will be okay. There wouldn't be any language oppression, because around age 5 is when you really have that language encoded inside of your brain. And if you try and teach older children or even adults, it's really hard for them versus children. They just pick up on it so quickly because their minds are much more flexible and susceptible to learning. And a lot of times this happens when you have hearing parents and they have a deaf child. There's no language model for them from the ages of 0 to 5, and that's why they struggle so much. So 0 to 5 is really important foundational years for learning. Deaf parents are very involved in making sure that their children learn sign language. And in Sweden, they have a much better system for integrating their children to become much more language proficient in sign language. They have language models. And so I would think that this would be something that we'd want to implement in America. And so my goal, oh man, my goal is in the future to see deaf education become much more impactful so that children have a positive experience in the education system.